evening, malcontents, and how's everybody doing tonight? I am the Malcontent, and welcome to another episode of the Malcontentment Happy Hour. Sorry about that. I got all sorts of messages popping up on my phone as I was trying to start the show, and part of what that caused is some titles to get messed up. So some of you have right titles, some of you have wrong titles. Don't worry about it. I'm aware of the problem. Drink. All right. Let's go ahead and get started. We're going to dive right into it. And the first place we're going to go is actually not on the list of the stories. The first place we're going to go is the Supreme Court of the United States, where the Supreme Court voted 4-4 in a deadlock. And then we'll get into what happens when the Supreme Court votes 4-4 in a deadlock. But the Supreme Court voted 4-4 in a deadlock on the issue of whether to allow ballots in Pennsylvania to be counted if they arrive past 8 p.m. on Tuesday, the 3rd, Election Day. And what the Supreme Court decided was, yes, because if there's a 4-4 deadlock, if you have an even number of justices, or a justice were in theory to recuse themselves, giving you an even number of justices if you had odd number in the court, then it just defaults back to the lower court ruling unless they kick it down. In this case, what happens is the lower court ruling was yes, so the Supreme Court by deadlocking was yes. Right across party lines. So yeah, your vote matters depending on which side of this equation that you want to be on. So what that means is for mail-in ballots, they can be counted up to 3 days after Election Day, as long as there was a good faith effort to get those ballots in prior to Election Day. And I think good faith, I am defining it because this is kind of breaking news and I haven't had a chance to dive into it. I'm guessing that's based on postmark, or when it shows up to election officials if somebody is hand delivering it. On the subject of that, up to 28 million people have already voted in the election so far. It is unprecedented, the number of people who have voted up to this point. And with that, we're actually going to go to additional somewhat breaking news. And that breaking news is in Massachusetts. And then we're going to get into our stories.
Dalton man has been arrested for allegedly burning a display of hay bales, showing support for Joe Biden's presidential campaign. Dalton police said and fire were called to a report of hay bales on fire along Route 9 just after 6:30 Friday night. You can see him there. Police arrested 49-year-old Lonnie Durfee of Dalton for setting those bales on fire.
All right, so what's the breaking news? There's actually a lot to this story. There's a lot to unpack here. So Dickon Crane, I know, Western Massachusetts, like all of these names are like, but yes, that is the name, Dickon Crane, fourth generation owner of this particular farm in Dalton, Mass, which is in Western Massachusetts. It is the owner who set up this hay bale display for Harris Biden that Lonnie in the story there set on fire. Lonnie lost his son on August 24th in a motorcycle accident. And there are some reports that Lonnie's been a little bit unstable since that happened. Now, on the night that the hay bales were torched, Lonnie did not make it secret to anybody that he was going to torch them. He went to a convenience store, bought the gasoline that he put, and told everybody, I'm gonna go burn that over there. He then went to, I'm not making this up, this is so Massachusetts, Patty's Bar. Yes, like Patty's, like in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, the exact same thing. No, not Patty's Bar, not Irish pub. He went in there and basically told everybody the same thing. I'm going to torch it. And he went and torched it and was almost immediately identified because people are like, oh yeah, he was in here saying he was going to do that. In addition to this, Lonnie, when Dickens found out, when Dickon Crane, I really tried to do this with a straight face, the owner of the farm found out that Lonnie had lost his son, he actually called him and talked to him in jail. Now we're going to get into why Lonnie is still in jail, to express his condolences of him losing his son. And additionally, Dickon Crane in all of this is just coming across as all around amazing, really good guy because what he has said, I guess there's been a huge outpouring in the community. He has, instead of Biden Harris, put up more hay bales, but more in just a unity message that is up there. And what I understand, there's been a huge outpouring from the community to support for him, the local community. There has been people wanting to donate. He's like, no, 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 no. If you want to donate to the ACLU. And by the way, I don't care what political party you support. If you want to make me happy, go out and vote. That is almost word for word what Dick and Crane had to say. Now, why is Lonnie still in jail? Lonnie, arsonist, Trump supporter, in talking to the police, turns out this was not the first political signs he had burned. There had been some other questions about political signs burned in the area, and he confessed to that. In addition, Lonnie has a criminal record, including a violent criminal record of assault. So he is being held right now pending a hearing to figure out, is he safe enough to release out into the public, since he has admitted, essentially, I say admitted, not in court, but admitted to police that he has done multiple arsons and he has a prior violent criminal record. Now, I say violent because the word assault is there, but there isn't a lot of details into this 2014 arrest, but it is 6 years old. That's what I say. That's what we led with this. There was a lot to unpack in this story coming out of Massachusetts. Now, at the end of the day, Massachusetts is going to be a blue state. What's interesting, what's happening there is from about Worcester County, which is about dead center of the state, and as you go kind of west, particularly kind of like in the northwest, not in the stuff on the Connecticut border, the state is kind of getting a little purplish. Worcester County is almost kind of 50-50 over there. And I've been following that and reading some stuff over there. So I thought, yeah, there's some keyword stuff there to kind of block some of the crazy comments we may have. Roberts crossed lines to vote with libs. Significant. I remember when Roberts was made by Bush 43. Was to the Supreme Court, and he was made the head justice. Is that what they're called? The head justice, the grand poobah of the court. And there was lots of hand wringing over his qualifications, the young age, and he's super conservative. And what do you get? And Roberts doesn't come across as a very, very partisan guy. What's very interesting is, when he made decisions on gay marriage equality, and when he made decisions, meaning his particular vote on those things, on the ACA, it's actually pretty interesting, because what I found is people in my conservative circles were upset with both of the decisions. They felt he made the wrong decision on ACA, it should have been killed, and they felt he made the wrong decision on gay marriage. Very, very interesting. He, not something I'm going to... Where do you think you're going, Yoda? Yes, he woke up. Well, we'll hold you this way. You need to go back to your bed and go back to sleep. Or we're going to put on the technical difficulties loop, and you're going to go to your crate. These are your choices in life. All right? We're going to go back to your bed. Hi, America. Bye, America. Bed. Bed. We're back. Never a dull moment in live production, I'll tell you that. And I actually do think I am going to have to put the technical difficulties on and send him to his oubliette. Are you amused? Buy a dog, they said, or adopt a dog. It'll lower your blood pressure. He'll make you happy. He'll fulfill your life. Get a dog, they said. Yeah, I wouldn't trade him in for anything at the end of the day. All right. Now we're going to go to our lead story. And our lead story takes us to Nashville, Tennessee, where just yesterday on Sunday, they finished, after petitioning since June, a 350-foot long Black Lives Matter mural. And let's roll that clip.
New images tonight of damage already done to Nashville's Black Lives Matter mural. You can see right here in these pictures some of the damage. Someone left a burnout tire mark over the mural.
I'm appalled. It's disgusting.
It's disappointing that people would take issue to me wanting to be treated equally and as a human.
Organizer John Smith says he knew some people would disagree with the mural and the message, but didn't expect something like this to happen so soon.
It's not that we're trying to say Black lives matter more than white lives or anybody's lives. It's just a statement that Black folks have been having problems with police for a very long time, police brutality. So we just want to make a statement that Black Lives Matter.
Smith says volunteers will be out here starting on Monday to help clean up and repaint some of the damaged letters.
So there you go. It took them less than 24 hours. Admittedly, it's skid marks over it, but they're going to have to do some repainting, and they're going to have to do some additional work on that. And it didn't even take 24 hours for it to happen.
These are chuds.
Cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers.
Yeah, that's what they are. They're chuds. So we've seen this repeated out in multiple cities. And just, again, the reality is, as the story explained, when people say Black Lives Matter, it's not that it doesn't mean that anything else matters. It's like if somebody came up to you and said, I have breast cancer. And if you looked them in the eyes, would you ever say, well, but what about colon cancer? Doesn't colon cancer matter? Why should I care about your breast cancer? Yeah, that's kind of what you sound like. And I just want to get this can of soup. And that's right. I have my Antifa approved soup because apparently this throws really well. So does bumblebee tuna. Ha ha! There's more where that came from, chuds. By the way, I see the chuds prattling on about Antifa in the comments. Mods, as long as they semi-behave, keep them in, because we're going to make them very, very sad. We're going to make them cry tonight. And I love crying chuds.
I've heard people say, I don't even want to go to City Hall anymore because they're not going to let me speak anyway. I'll put my name on the list. 2 hours, 3 hours later, maybe I'll get a chance to speak for a minute. And I know the city council is going to ignore what I say.
The power grid was shut off by Dickless here.
Is this true? Yes, it's true. This man has no dick.
All right. So, but seriously, let them, as long as they semi-behave, leave them alone, because we're going to run a story about some of the stuff they're prattling on about Antifa that it's going to make them very, very upset. We have a clip from Chief Diaz, which we're going to be talking about a little bit later. I've never seen 3 words trigger people. It's like totally Black Lives Matter. Rah! It means my life doesn't matter. No, that's not what it means. We must destroy these things that say Black Lives Matter. What is wrong with you? And then, what does this exactly accomplish? Whether it's pouring paint or whether it's running donuts, meaning in the car donuts, not police donuts, if running donuts and skid marks over it, spray painting on it, vandalism over it, or maybe you're an activist, a fake kind of activist who is in CHOP, and then you went to New York City to smear black paint all over the Black Lives Matter mural. Remember that lady here? Yeah, and she assaulted and injured a police officer in the process of doing that. I still really haven't heard any chuds ever go, and that was really awful of her to assault a police officer while she was doing it, which only then just kind of ties into this narrative of law and order, unless the laws that are being broken are the ones you're okay with having them broken. And with that, we're going to go to our third story. And our third story takes us to Seattle. Now, Chief Diaz had about a 20-minute press conference today, and we're going to go ahead and roll this clip where Chief Diaz is talking about the over 1,100 protests that have happened since May in Seattle.
Yeah, so, right now, most people would go out. We have hundreds of protests every single day, every single year. We've had over 1,100 probably since around May to now. Many of those protests will not even require an officer to be present. We've had a protest of 80,000 people, or a demonstration of 80,000 people focused on Black Lives Matter, that were walking the streets, expressing their First Amendment rights, not going out and destroying, spray painting or breaking windows. So those are the things that we have every single day, day in and day out, peaceful protests. The ones that are focused on in our night are actually looking for that engagement with police officers. They are going out and spray painting and breaking pay boxes and breaking windows. And so those are the ones that aren't peaceful. Those are the ones that we're trying to pay attention to. We are actually trying to find ways for us to disengage, so we're not constantly having to engage the groups, but they're trying to create more property damage for that engagement. And when you create that property damage, you're affecting the businesses, you're affecting small businesses, you're affecting the residents. They don't feel safe to come out at night. So there is a big difference between what we're seeing in a large-scale event, even 5,000, 10,000 people that don't go out and break anything. And so there is a sharp difference between peaceful and those that are going out and focusing on violence.
So there's protests that happen every day. Multiple protests, 1,100 of them, and most of them are peaceful. That's what Chief Diaz had to say. So is Chief Diaz part of the deep state? He's part of Press-Tifa, isn't he? He has been compromised. I think Chief Diaz is pro-Antifa because he was not drinking the violent protester Kool-Aid. Chief Diaz was accurately pointing out that most protests are peaceful. What a shock. But you don't have to take Chief Diaz's word for it, because this UConn study came out just a few hours ago. And what UConn concluded was at least 96% of Black Lives Matter protests were peaceful. The University of Connecticut, and we have the story up there, did an analysis from the Crowd Counting Consortium of over 7,000 separate Black Lives Matter anti-racism events across the country in May and June. Now, almost all of those would have been in June in that particular story. Because May, right, the George Floyd protests didn't start until the end of May. So, no, I'm not moving the goalpost. It really is like about 5 weeks of data that they have there. Five and a quarter, if you want to get real pedantic. 7,000 protests, and 96% of them were peaceful. Which aligns with every other study that has been done by every other organization that comes in at 93 to 97% peaceful. They're not peaceful. No, the thing is, it is?
Chud. Cannibalistic, humanoid, underground dwellers.
Chud. It's a cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller.
See, here's what it is. You don't tune into the peaceful stuff. That's not true. Oh, it's totally true, because we see the data, we see the stats, we see the numbers. When we're somewhere showing speeches, when we're somewhere showing just peaceful marching, when we're showing musical performance, when we're showing poetry, when we're showing sit down and civil discourse and civil discussion, even when we were in CHOP on 6/8, the first day that the police pulled back, and we were streaming just basically a group of people sitting and having conversation on, well, what do we do now? You don't tune in. You only tune in when things get crazy and spicy. And so you're just winding it up in your head. You're creating your own narrative of violent, awful protesters. Chief Diaz doesn't even share your view on that. And there's his words. Now, there's another part of Chief Diaz's press conference that I want to talk about. which is this situation, these criminal charges that Jacob Greenberg is facing. Why aren't you covering that? He doesn't want to cover that because that goes against the narrative. No, that's not true at all. If you are particularly in the town of where we are, in our secret underground lair, liar, he's a liar, our secret underground lair, well, we're ready to defend ourselves with cans of soup. These throw really well. Jesus Christ. Jacob's actually a pretty well-known individual in the community. He's certainly a well-known individual in the online community. He wasn't well-known for his anti-fascist rants and reviews. He was well-known as a budding photographer, and he shared a number of photographs and his experiences within the community that I live in. And it is because of that reason, because it can very easily get politically charged in the community, sorry, squeaky pig, that it can get politically charged within the community that I occupy, which is the reason why I really don't want to talk much about it. And the other thing is, he's under a local pending criminal investigation and of very, very serious charges. Now, if you watched the stream from September 1st, see, that one you probably watched, because that's the stream where Jacob is accused of throwing the Molotov cocktail at the East Precinct building, actually two of them. No, he did it! Yeah, well, he hasn't been found guilty in a court of law, and in journalism, right now, he is a suspect. He is not convicted. This is how the world works, chuds. When and if he is convicted, then it is established that he did it. He is accused of throwing 2 Molotov cocktails at the East Precinct building. He is accused of striking a Seattle police officer with a baseball bat with extreme and violent force. He is excused with plotting on doing other additional fires. Those are the things that he is accused of. He needs to get prosecuted. And then you get to the outcome at the end of the day. And if you watched on Friday, now, of course, I believe these are federal charges. That works differently. If he were being charged in King County, he would only have a 4% chance of actually going to trial and a 96% chance of either a plea deal or a dismissal. We went through those numbers in King County Superior Court. And the numbers are abysmal. And that's the thing, if you are so-called law and order, that you really should be upset about, because that's where a major part of the problem that we have lies as a community. It isn't a lack of, we covered this on Friday, it's not a lack of police officers, and it's not a lack of budget when you benchmark and compare to other cities and use every possible measure to slice and dice that data. Now, if you did watch that feed on the first, one of the things that you would have known in my commentary, and also by the reactions of the other people that were all around there, you heard a ton of people as they were streaming past me kind of going, who did that? Who the fuck did that? Literally, you can go back and watch. September 1st. I even gave you the date. You can watch everybody's body language when it's thrown, because everybody just kind of goes, you know, you ever kind of like yell at a dog and the dog goes, and I know it's not the greatest analogy, you know, or you go like to a little kid, you're like, stop it! And you shouldn't be yelling at your little kids, but everybody has a weak moment, right? Stop, and the kid kind of freezes. If you watch that, that's kind of what everybody did. And we know from the texts and the chats that have been released, you know, that Jacob was kind of emulating some Donald Trump there, you know, kind of like, hey, I could go walk out on Fifth Avenue and shot. Yeah, I've got a theory about the Fifth Avenue, and I could shoot somebody and still be president. Yeah, I know, I tied all that back together. Beating a dead horse at this point. The reality is, Chief Diaz said today, most protests are peaceful. He did about 4.5 minutes this morning on the update of Jacob Greenberg and what's going on with his case, and then answered a series of questions from people that were there in attendance in the small press conference. So take that as you want, chuds. I don't know what else to tell you.
These are chuds.
Cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers.
And at that, we're going to go ahead and do a little bit pause for the cause, and we're going to run a spot.
Black Coffee is a hub for communities and a hub for meeting people, making friends, and understanding.
What Black Coffee is to me is a place to actually call home, a place where Black youth will feel welcomed, where Black families will come and feel like they're at home.
What we're trying to build is more than just coffee. Community is something that we do naturally. We know who's in the community, we know what the deficits are, and we're trying to fix that. We want to bring people together.
My hope is that the phrase grounded in excellence shows up everywhere and that it becomes a movement.
I'm looking forward to hanging out at Black Coffee with my friends and feeling safe.
Black coffee to me means opportunity for people like me and my other friends and family to come here and do homework safely and hang out and stuff like that.
That is happening. It is happening.
Black Coffee had their grand opening on the 17th. We tried to get out there. Unfortunately, they were so overwhelmed with the number of customers that they had that they shut it down. And we missed the cut by like literally 5 minutes. And I had coffee totally on the brain. And for the record, I ended up at a Starbucks because that was the next closest place. And it was truly awful. That coffee tasted like it was made 2 days ago. Shame on you, Starbucks. But I do plan to get out there. Black Coffee is open Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. and on Saturdays, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. And they have had a huge outpouring of support from the community. And by the way, October 3rd, windows broken at Starbucks, 16 people arrested. Black Coffee was attempted to be firebombed almost a month ago. No arrests. But we know that you're on it. We know you're going to find that dude. We know you're looking real hard for him. Because small business gets all the support, as we know, especially Black, Indigenous, person of color small business. And I'm going to keep hammering the point that 16 people arrested for breaking windows at Starbucks. Nobody arrested for firebombing Black Coffee a few weeks before their opening. Until there is an arrest. I have a feeling I'm going to be talking about it for a long time. All right, and with that, we're going to go to our fourth story. And our fourth story takes us to Michigan.
And get your schools open. Get your schools open. The schools have to be open, right? Lock them all up.
Bang, bang.
Keep moving.
You need to know who the people are that are taking your rights.
Brandon Casera of Canton, one of the men in federal court Tuesday in Grand Rapids charged with the plot to allegedly kidnap or kill Governor Whitmer, is a self-proclaimed President Trump government-hating anarchist. And he went on a YouTube rant when Canton police officers pulled him over in September for not having up-to-date insurance.
You gotta know who the enemy is.
The FBI had informants inside following the plot, but Casera's alleged threats made the FBI finally move in. Casera allegedly said the group could practice its state house attack on the governor right in Canton by targeting to kill Canton police officers.
I have zero patience for immoral, coward criminals, okay? And guess what? I'm sick of being robbed and enslaved by the state, period. I'm sick of it. And these are the guys who are actually doing it, you know? So if we're doing a recon or something and we come up on some of them, dude, you better not give them a chance. You either tell them to go right now or else they're going to die, period. That's what it's going to be, dude, because they are the fucking enemy, period.
The FBI says the group used a rural area in Jackson County as a training ground to run through scenarios.
The Munith property was home to 2 of the militia members. Jason Colthorpe with new insight into some of the men involved from their neighbors and what we found on social media.
Pam Karshnock lives next door to the home on Dunn Road in Munith that was raided early Thursday. Many neighbors had been fed up with all the shooting there in recent months.
I was going to confront him a couple times. My husband said no. Don't, that's why people move to the country, yada, yada. And I thought, well, in the times we've got with the gun rights and so on, I better not say anything.
She and everyone else came to learn today this was much more than just some guys firing automatic weapons when the men who lived there, Pete Musico and his son-in-law Joseph Morrison, were arrested in a terror plot to kidnap Governor Gretchen Whitmer.
I'm still shaking.
The owner of this vacuum shop says Adam Fox lived here for the last couple of weeks. He says he lived behind this door and down into the basement.
Basement, where he stayed. Okay. And he was only going to stay there till 1 November.
Why did you decide it was time for him to go?
He was buying more like attachments for like an AR-15, and he was buying like food. And I'm not stupid, I was in the Marine Corps. So that, I told him he had to go.
The 6 men, along with 7 others, were arrested in an October FBI raid. 6 were charged federally, the rest charged by the state for acts of terror.
We are not the same. I'm an American. You're a sick asshole.
And that really about kind of sums it up. So there's a lot to unpack there. We should call this the unpacking hour. There is a lot to unpack there. It's like I kind of like don't even know where to start. I can't think of how many times mods or admins, and sometimes myself, would just be like, "Oh, you're really brave from your mom's basement." Well, maybe not from their mom's basement, but apparently from the basement of a vacuum cleaner store. I mean, that's number one. The second thing that kind of jumped out to me, people that know cars, it's like right away, the interior of that vehicle is super distinctive. It's a PT Cruiser. The doors of a PT Cruiser would be very good at maybe stopping a 22 caliber bullet. That was the other, it's like, so that's going to be their urban assault vehicle, huh? The PT Cruiser. The land that they were practicing all of this on is 1 acre in size. That's one of the things we had found out in our research in doing this, and neighbors around. And there were a lot, as that alluded to, there were a lot of complaints among the neighbors. Like nobody was calling up and going, but of just endless hours and hours of gunfire. And of course, what we found out is that they were planning this attack. There has since been an additional arrest on state charges. It wouldn't surprise me as they go further down the rabbit hole that there will be additional arrests. Now, Chuds, I have a question for you.
It's a cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller.
What I need you to do is in the comments, put us a link to the Antifa plot to kidnap 2 governors and potentially murder them. I would love to see the link to that. Where there's a valid FBI source investigations and chats and videos, and please put it in the comment. I would love to see, because that's the Antifa weapon of choice, as I understand from Dear Leader, is Campbell's soup. And don't forget the bumblebee tuna, because bumblebee tuna throws particularly well. That's what I got to say about that. The question that we have here is, they certainly don't come across as, if you look at this objectively, let's take kind of the gallows humor away from this, and you look at this objectively, and you look at it from an operational security standpoint. It's like, why are you filming yourself? Like the guy who, like that guy, there's one guy in the video, there's so much, it's so hard to unpack. It's like, okay, you're dry firing the guns. Now modern guns aren't as impacted by dry firing, but it is still generally not recommended to dry fire a gun. And, you know, he's pulling away and dry firing the gun. He loads the clip, and then he just throws the his actually, I'd have to go back and watch again. I just will call it an assault rifle. I'm not sure actually what flavor of assault rifle was. Pretty sure it was an AR-15, but I'd have to go back and look. And then, you know, he pulls his pistol, and like, he has his eyes almost closed. It doesn't even look like he's aiming. Actually, it's a good stance from a firearm standpoint. His face looks really weird, and he dry fires it off a few times, and then he stops. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, so you're just going to throw your assault weapon on the ground? This is your plan? I mean, that in itself is just a little... And then you're going to go to your sidearm? It's like... I thought tactically, if you're going to your sidearm, things have gone sideways. You know, you're either really, really close in, or something has gone really, really sideways in your plan. You know, they not only plan to kill the governor, but they plan to kill anybody that got in their way of getting to the governor, including the police. And then you have this video, like of this panning shot of this room that they're in, and it looks like a white nationalist threw up in a Taliban den. I mean, it has like some of the exact, you know, here's the guns on display and all of the rhetoric, and all it needed instead of Taliban was instead of the woman with her ass on the American flag. So respectful of the American flag. They love their country. They love that flag. You know, instead of that, they just needed the black Taliban battle flag up in there, and it basically would have looked like the Taliban Lair thing. It really would have. So the real question is, how many more of these sleeper cells are out there? And how many more are out there that don't have people as, quite frankly, as dumb as these guys were? Now, they weren't fully stupid, because the FBI is saying that there are things they will probably never know, because they did a lot of encrypted chats, but they didn't do everything in encrypted chat. Like, why? And the other thing is they had a lot of stuff on a foreign server, of which they will probably never get access to, meaning the FBI. So, yeah, they love their country, don't they? Law and order. I hope you're proud of your...
These are shut.
Cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers.
And with that, we're going to roll another spot.
The Malcontentment TANGO is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with 3 key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events, live as they happen. To defend the First Amendment, using our rights of a free press, and to petition the government for redress of grievances. And to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals, including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support us is to like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, Periscope, Twitch, and Instagram. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent.
And we really do appreciate you and appreciate you for your support. I saw a couple of comments real quick while that spot was running. They took the video. They took the video themselves. That's the part, like, you see in that PT Cruiser clip. I keep going back to the PT Cruiser clip, right, where they're you know, doing this tactical deployment out of a vehicle, and they're taking up their positions. And I would presume what they're doing there is, like, you'll pick this tar right. They're probably using clock. You know, like, you're going to take from 9 o'clock to noon, you're going to take from noon to 3 o'clock. That's what I'm guessing what they're doing in that kind of deployment, although everybody's looking forward. No one's looking from the back as far as we could tell. And you actually see a couple of people that are standing around with, you know, they're doing the streamer thing. Hey, here we go. So they filmed themselves. And if they were filming themselves from a training standpoint, and then they didn't delete the stuff, that's what I mean. Not necessarily sharpest tools in the drawer, but there's, by the mountain of evidence, they are not convicted yet. They're accused of wanting to kill 2 governors, kidnap them, either kill them or leave one of them dead in the middle lake, because there's connections to the Virginia governor. That's why there's two. And they're accused of multiple weapons charges and, plot and sedition. And so we'll see what happens. We'll give them the same benefits of the doubt, Chuds. They're yours. Own them. Own them. All right. So with that and covering up, the other thing, of course, here is that Donald Trump leading a lock her up chant just days after all of this happened, which is just continued signal of like, Proud Boys, stand back and stand by, because we'll tell you when the night of the long knives are coming. Yeah, 11-4. 11-4 could be pretty interesting in America. And on the subject of 11-4, we're going to talk a little bit about 11-3. And with that, I want to go and pulled up some poll numbers. If you look at Real Clear Politics, that's the other one. And if you look at 538, they're basically about the same. There's a reason I like 538, not for the numbers, but I do like one of their charts, and we're going to talk about that. The national polls are generally holding steady. And in the national polls, what you're kind of seeing is Biden is running somewhere between like 51.5 and 53, and Trump is running somewhere between 41 and 43. That's in the aggregates, right? It goes up and down as different polls come in and different methodologies come in. It doesn't add up to 100. Well, sure, because amazingly, there's a couple of percent of people who are apparently undecided. I wince like that when I say that, not because how it's so polarized. It's so polarized. How could anybody be undecided regardless of the candidate of their choice? We also know that there are two, I say viable very loosely. They're not viable in the sense that that they're going to go anywhere in their campaigns, but they're viable, and I believe they're on just about all of the ballots. We have a few other kind of, in Washington State, we have a couple of real fringe people on the presidential ballot also. But there's, you have your Green Party and you have your Libertarian Party candidates. Depending on the state, depending on the poll, depending on how they're polling, they're generally in aggregate polling 2 and 2.5%. So you got to chafe some of that number out of there too. So we'll go wrong button. Beauty of live production, and when you're doing all the engineering, I will be so happy when C disease is over. But if we look here at the numbers here, things are generally holding steady. But national polls, when you're looking at things in a country that doesn't pick things from based on the national polls through the Electoral College, are kind of pointless. Now, I know there's a lot of people say, yeah, Hillary and Dr. But there's one key difference. Hillary never even got close to 50% support. If you go back in those numbers. And if you go back in those numbers, the Libertarian candidate and the Green Party candidate had a lot more support than either, right? Libertarian candidate 4 years ago has got more support than probably all of the independent candidates rolled together this year. And not all of those votes, right, would have been pulled from Hillary Clinton. Some of those votes would have absolutely been pulled to Donald Trump, just as you would have that right now. And of course, you're going to have some people that are doing write-in votes, like Governor Hogan. I wrote in Reagan. I wrote in a dead person who was pretty darn senile in the or Alzheimer's. They would have called it senility back then, but Alzheimer's in his last year in office. It's very clear. People that were around him, they're still alive. It's like, yeah, it was kind of like we're biting our nails at the time with him. And, it's just like we have to kind of keep him away from the cameras as much as possible. And if you go and dig through some of Reagan's speeches in his last year in office, there's a couple of speeches where he just kind of, huh? What? Oh, hey, hi, America. He kind of wanders off a little bit. So anyway, you have the national numbers. Popularity numbers, though, show a little bit of a story, right? Because one of the arguments people have is they're shy Trump supporters. They don't want to admit that they support Trump in a poll.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
But I get it, right? You're ashamed of your candidate, so you don't want to admit that you're supporting your candidate. I mean, that's the conclusion that we have here, right? So, okay, fine. You're ashamed of your candidate, and you don't want to admit it. Are there shy Trump voters in 2016? And I think the answer is yes. Let's look at these national poll numbers. This is why I'm pulling from the same source. You have Biden tracking at 52.4. You have Trump tracking at 41.7. I know it says 6 minutes ago. That's probably more like 4 hours ago now. Let's go here. How popular is Donald Trump? His popularity shows 42.7%. So his popularity is higher than what he's tracking in the national polls. So are there shy Trump voters? The answer to this is almost certainly yes. And it's at least 1 percentage point, because it's not a huge leap of faith to go, well, wait a minute, if you're saying you approve of the guy, wouldn't you be voting for the guy? There is probably a sliver in there of people who are going, I approve of him, but I'm voting for the libertarian candidate, right? Because maybe the question is, do you approve, right? They could be asked, do you approve? Who are you going to vote for? There may be people who go approve, but I'm undecided. I know that sounds...
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard.
It's not me. I'm just repeating what the experts say on this stuff. But it does appear that there are some shy Trump voters when we look at this number. Now, the other thing that we look at when we can see that Trump's disapproval number of 54.1% is higher than the percentage of people that are voting for Biden by about 1.6%. Well, wait a minute, what's that disconnect, right? Are there people who disapprove? Absolutely. And there are probably people in that disapproval number that aren't going to vote for Biden. They may disapprove, but they may be writing in a candidate, they may be voting third party, or they may not be electing to vote at all. And again, you might be looking at these numbers here and go, they don't add up to 100%. Yes, because apparently there are people who can't decide if they approve or disapprove when they're asked these questions, which again, it's so polarized, it hurts the brain. Here's the reality. The race is tightening up. And this gets to the one that I really want to talk about. And this is why I'm using 538. I'm not using 538 for the numbers. I'm using 538 because I love this visual of the snake chart. And they call it the snake. That's what they call it. So what the snake chart here, snake chart, snake, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather. Shelly Simons is selling a 7-symbol drum set made by Simmons. All right. What you have here on the snake chart is at the very top, you have a district in Nebraska. And as you can see, that is like Crayola crayon red. What that means is that hell would basically have to freeze over for that district to vote for Joe Biden. Now, if you follow the snake all the way down to the bottom, you have this Crayola blue at the bottom there, and that is the District of Columbia. And what you have there is hell would have to freeze over for the people of District of Columbia to vote for Donald Trump. And then as you move closer to the center, the colors get a little dimmer and dimmer until you have kind of this pinkish color on the Trump side that then goes into this very light, almost sky blue, blue-gray color, and then it gets darker. As you move to the middle, you have the battleground states. And we're essentially 2 weeks out. Tomorrow will be 14 days from Election Day. And what we are seeing is a tightening in the race. And if you follow this snake, and I had talked about this a little bit in an earlier happy hour, that black line is the dividing line. So in other words, when you come Election Day, if the Trump side going down, if that red, when it's all added up, crosses the black line, Trump is president. If you go the other direction, if the blue crosses the black line going up, then Biden is president. And at least for right now, it doesn't appear there are any scenarios that could end in a tie. When they run all their calculations, neither 538, you're not seeing anything in the mainstream media, you're not seeing anything on Real Clear Politics, you're not seeing anything in 538, you're not seeing anything from people that you would generally trust going, hey, there could be a tie here, from anybody that you would say is necessarily a reliable source. There aren't really any, every now and then one kind of bubbles up, but it's not like one of these where it's very easy to pen it out. So when you follow the snake here, they have what I like to call firewall states. What I mean by a firewall state is that's a state that is going to go to one candidate or the other, And anything then past that, you're going to have to probably consider a battleground state. So if I follow the Trump train, then Texas to me is the firewall state. It is going to take something really huge for Texas to flip over and roll into the Biden column. I do believe that by 2028, Texas will be a blue state because of the demographic shift and because of the people that are moving to that state from other areas. Careful what you wish for, people moving away from California. We're going to get into that in a minute, and changing demographics in some of the states and where I think that's going with that. If we look at Biden, to me, the firewall state is Nevada. Nevada has turned blue. It voted for Clinton. The numbers are better for Biden than they are for Clinton. So it is almost, it's going to take a really big something to derail the Biden train up to Nevada. So that means Iowa, Ohio, Georgia, a district in Maine, North Carolina, Arizona, Florida, a district in Nebraska, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin are in play. Now, last week when we did this, Ohio and Georgia were blue, and Wisconsin was on the other side of the Nevada firewall. But here's something that's very interesting. Wisconsin moved not because the numbers have really moved in Wisconsin. It's just Nevada is turning even bluer. And I'm still not comfortable in saying that Wisconsin is the firewall state, because I think there are scenarios where Wisconsin could ultimately go to Donald Trump. And we have on the ticker, right, Real Clear Politics, what they're predicting is 358 for 181 with no toss-up states. That is the Real Clear Politics number, at least again, right before we went on the air. So Real Clear Politics is also predicting a Biden win at this point. So now we start breaking down the states. Iowa shouldn't be competitive for Trump. Trump should just be cruising in Iowa. He shouldn't be having to fight for the state. Ohio shouldn't be like the same thing. Trump shouldn't have to be fighting for Ohio. The reality is, of the 6 key battleground states, none of those states had growth in manufacturing jobs. Let me say that again. Of the key 6 battleground states, most of them in the Rust Belt, none of them had a net aggregate growth in manufacturing jobs as promised. But manufacturing jobs grew. They absolutely did grow. And when we fact-checked the Trump debate and Trump trotted out the number, we rated his number as truthful and actually a touch conservative. When you dive into those numbers, most of the manufacturing numbers that have been added are in food production. They were not added in what you think of Rust Belt areas in building stuff. We linked yesterday to the story about Foxconn and the disaster that's happened there and how Wisconsin has just been totally screwed over by Foxconn. No factory was built there, no 8th wonder of the world. They've laid almost everybody, and Wisconsin just walked back all their tax breaks. Was the Carrier plant in Indiana saved? The plant itself was saved, but over 700 jobs still disappeared. And Carrier ended up splintering into 3 separate companies. It became its own company. And there are jobs that are left there. They are non-union jobs at this point. They're not the high-paying jobs. And the workers are still kind of biting their nails on what's going to happen down the road, because there's going to be another decision made on that plant conveniently at the end of 2020. He shouldn't have to be fighting for those states. So it's not all good news. Georgia is another state. But now the thing that was interesting, and 538 brought this up, is that Georgia went to Trump only by 5 points. And Biden is actually tracking in this respect much better than Clinton has. And Georgia has become more blue in those 4 years. So Georgia's an interesting state. And and I know some people, Nate Silver got it wrong, and I know Nate Silver's defending himself. Nate Silver says, so take it with a grain of salt, that he thinks Georgia would flip before Ohio. Because of the demographics that are there. What's interesting is you look at the snake, and it doesn't reflect that. I'm not going to talk about Maine District 2 or the Nebraska District. because right now there isn't a scenario where you're looking at where you're seeing like a 270 to 268 and that one district could make a sense. I have said multiple times where New Hampshire goes, I believe Maine too is going to go. And I think that Maine will be a solid blue state. You go into North Carolina next. North Carolina, the race is tightening up. You go to Arizona, the needle really hasn't moved in Arizona. I do think Biden's going to win Arizona. I'm going to tell you why. First of all, McSally is a really unpopular candidate for the Senate there. Just as Jones has very, very weak outlook in Alabama, McSally has a very, very weak outlook in Arizona. She was appointed. The people didn't want her. It was very political. Nobody was really happy except for the governor and the Trump train that she was picked up. She's not bringing in the bacon, so to speak. And I say bacon, not bacon, but pork as in political pork that Senator McCain had brought in there. And if you have people actively going there to the polls to get McSally out, then that's going to have an impact on up the ticket and down the ticket. The other thing is, careful what you wish for, Chuds.
It's a cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller.
You're so happy that people are leaving California. Yeah, they're moving to Nevada and Arizona. And you've had a lot of people from California move and go into Arizona. And so you have a demographic shift that is going on in that state. And I think that Arizona is going to go blue, and I think that that is a trend that is going to happen in that state. The other thing that you have happening is, yes, right, the wall hasn't been built, so you have the broken promise on the wall, and the small little patches where it's been built, there's been eminent domain. There's people there that are like, well, wait a minute, I wanted a wall, but I didn't realize you're going to take half my property to build a wall.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
Like, what did you think they were going to do? What did you think? Anyway, these are rugged individuals who aren't very happy. Are they going to vote for Biden? Nah. But will they maybe not vote at all? Yeah. And so now people that wanted the wall, are they going to vote for Biden? Probably not. Are they going to possibly just not vote? Yeah, that's very, very possible. So I think that Arizona is going to go blue. Then you get to Florida. And Florida is just its own unique form of, oh my God, what a screwed up state. The race is tightening in Florida. And what's interesting there is you have all sorts of demographic things that are happening, which I think makes Florida almost impossible to predict, as Florida's been impossible to predict for the last 20 years. The first thing that you have going on in Florida is in South Florida, down in the Miami area, you have Hispanic voters, and there's large Hispanic voters that are moving into the Trump camp because they are, quite frankly, afraid of the quote-unquote Gang of Four and Bernie Sanders politics. And when they hear socialism, they think Cuba and Venezuela and Nicaragua. And so the needle is moving on Hispanic voters in South Florida. And in 2016, those counties were as blue as could get for Hillary Clinton. And so you have that shift. The other thing you have, which is a much smaller shift, is Candace Owens' Blexit movement may be working and moving the needle in black voters who are 18 to 29 years old. Now, it's a tiny sliver of voters, but it has gone from about 10% that are supporting Trump to about 20% supporting Trump. On the other hand, people over 45, and particularly people over 65, are fleeing the Trump camp in Florida. I don't know, it's this whole thing about you should just die from sea disease to save the country, which, like, who would have thought that was a bad strategy? So Trump is losing white older voters while he's picking up these other voters. See why this is really hard to kind of figure out and read what's going on there. The reality is we are seeing a tightening in the polls, and I think what you're going to see is both campaigns and both candidates dumping a crap ton of money and a crap ton of energy into Florida. That gets us to Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, again, is another state that's really tough because you look at what's happening in, say, some of the rural counties, and they are just almost terrifyingly openly racist in those counties. If you watch Frank Nitti and his walk, it was horrific what he went through in Pennsylvania, and that in itself is concerning. On the other side of the coin, if you look at the total vote in the state and you look at where those areas are and how long people are already waiting in line, and top of the Supreme Court decision that now ballots that are submitted will get counted up to 3 days after, all of that kind of helps the picture in the Democrats. The other thing, of course, is voter registration numbers that are coming out of Pennsylvania. And then the last thing is the coal jobs didn't come back. The manufacturing jobs didn't come back. The other thing I think that we may be seeing is people are getting tired of the whole Donald Trump dog and pony show. And I think we saw that in who watched the two competing town halls. There were more eyeballs watching Biden than there were Donald Trump. I watched both. Literally, I had them up on two screens and I watched both of them, and I would turn the volume on one, turn it up on the other, and then try to rewatch it the other ones. But there does seem to be just some fatigue of the Donald Trump show. So let's go back to the snake. That goes back to Wisconsin. Even though Wisconsin has moved to the other side of the firewall, the other side of Nevada, and then once you get past Nevada, it's like those states are going for you. It's the same thing. If you go past Texas, those states are going for Trump, and if you think otherwise, you're too high on the Kool-Aid. If you get past Nevada, those states are going for Biden. If you don't think so, you're too high on the Kool-Aid. Wisconsin, it's just going to take something really, really big to move the needle in that particular state. And then the final thing that I'll just close up on here in this analysis, and this is why I love this snake chart, because it gives something very, very visual to look at that's really easy to understand and go, okay, this is where things line up and this is where it all falls. This is Biden's race to lose at this point. Biden has a clear advantage. Biden could still lose the race by virtue of where things fall in the Electoral College. Where Biden is up by 10, it would have to take something stunning for him not to end up with more electoral votes. And if his margin, right, Hillary Clinton's margin was about 3%. If Biden's margin's even half at 5%, and you kind of just go, okay, take Hillary Clinton's numbers, add 5% to that, you have a Biden presidency. With that said, there are paths to the White House. What's really fascinating, if you go to 538 and you play with some of the models there, both candidates, Trump and Biden, have a path to the White House without Florida. Either of them could lose Florida. Biden has a path to the White House losing both Pennsylvania and Florida. And he doesn't need Ohio or North Carolina to the White House, but he does need Arizona. And what could be very, very interesting when you look at if it's a close race, what could be interesting is the tipping point state may not be the ones we think. It may not be Florida, Ohio, North Carolina, Pennsylvania. The tipping point state just might be Arizona. We may know in 2 weeks. We may not. Just make sure you're armed with your Campbell's chicken noodle soup. I have thrown all of my Bumblebee tuna cans, and they throw much better than the other cans. Don't forget that.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
Where does this stuff come from? Like, where did the whole thing that Antifa was training squirrels and weasels to attack hikers? Like, this was a real thing. People believe this. Oh my goodness. Jason McRibbon, you have a phone? What is that? A phone number? Dude, I hope like you just didn't put your own phone number up on blast there, bro. I have no idea whose phone number that is. Let me see. I'm looking at your comments here. I guess if I hold it up, then you can see that. Ha! And then my phone's actually not allowing me to scroll to see all the comments. That's fantastic. I can't see all your comments. So I think maybe we're just going to go ahead and wrap it up. So thank you for watching Happy Hour. Let's talk about what's going to happen on Thursday. On Thursday, we are going to have at least one interview. First of all, Thursday, we got a busy night on Thursday. We have the presidential debates, presuming that one or the other candidate doesn't back out at the last minute. You never know with one of them. But allegedly, we're going to have a presidential debate. They have changed the format up, and microphones will be turned off at certain points so people can't get arrested. Although what I think will just happen is, you're wrong, 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 wrong. That's what I think will happen, even though, you know, their mic is turned off. But they're going to get 2 uninterrupted minutes where the mic is then turned off for the other candidate. So we will be fact-checking in real time, just like we did the other one. And hopefully I won't experience too much brain damage from doing that. And then we will go into happy hour afterwards, and we have at least one story that we are working on that we are going to run. And we are hoping to have a second story out of post in the interviews in. And we may be running 2 stories that we have for here. And so with that, I think we're going to call it a night. So malcontents, thank you very much. Be good to each other.
The Malcontentment Tango is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with 3 key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events, live as they happen. To defend the First Amendment, using our rights of a free press and to petition the government for redress of grievances, and to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals, including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support us is to like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, Periscope, Twitch, and Instagram. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent.
You fit the profile! You're the malcontent!
Nobody wants to hear the nonsensical ravings of a loudmouth malcontent.
He said malcontents, Antifa, fuck you!
You are the biggest hypocrite on the face of the planet.
I say that you're a terrible reporter.